Irrigation water requirements. First concept is seasonal evaporation. We need to be able to know what a total amount of seasonal losses is going to be. So the seasonal evapotranspiration, did I say evaporate? I mean evapotranspiration needs to be evaluated. So, or the crop consumptive use needs to be evaluated. So it's going to matter for our water requirements what crop we're growing. If we're growing wheat, we're going to need about 25 inches of water a year. If we're growing apples, we're going to need about 35 inches of water a year here in the Walla Walla area. So knowing that right off the top helps us determine how much total irrigation water we're going to have to deal with. So we have to know what our crop is to know what to plan for that particular year, especially when we're doing rotations, because it's the rare occurrence where you grow one crop right after another in anything except permanent crops. Now, that would not be true in turf. We're going to have turf after turf after turf, obviously, because it just stays there and we just keep maintaining it. If it's an orchard or a vineyard, it's a long duration crop. It's going to be there for a number of years. Asparagus, another perennial, might be there 20, 25 years. But other crops where they're annual crops, we're going to be cycling. So one year we may have potatoes. The next year we may have wheat. The next year we may have field corn. And then we might have field corn again, and we might come back to wheat or potatoes. You might have a 4-year rotation where you have 1 year of potatoes, a year of wheat, 2 years of field corn. Pretty common type of thing to see done in the Columbia Basin. Well, each one of those crops has a different water demand, so we have to know which crop is being grown and how many of those crops are being grown if we have multiple center pivots on a piece of property that we might be managing. So if we know that a quarter of our system is always going to be watering wheat, a quarter is going to be watering potatoes, and a half is going to be watering field corn, then we can make up our water mix for the year by knowing that. If we grew all corn, it's going to increase our water demand because corn and potatoes are pretty close. They need a little over 30 inches of water a year apiece, where wheat only needs 20 to 25 inches, somewhere in that ballpark. So if we went and grew no wheat a year and traded it out for corn, it's going to put a bigger demand on our overall system of operations. So when we're looking at a yearly water demand, that's going to be number one criteria, the crop, and what is its consumptive use. Next would be leaching requirement. Now, some areas have no leaching requirement. We don't have impurities in the soil, salts, that we're trying to leach out of the profile. But if we do have a certain amount of salts that we need to get rid of, then we're going to have to expend some of our water for deep percolation. Now, we're not going to do it during the growing season. We're going to do it in the off season. We're going to go in and water after the plants have been harvested or before we ever plant them in the spring. And we're going to leach, we're going to irrigate. And what we're going to do is we'll put on water more than the soil can withhold in the root zone, but not so fast that it doesn't all intake. So the trick is slow, saturating watering to drive the water horizon below the root zone. And the leached impurities in the soil, in this case the salts, are going to stay on the wetted front as it goes down in the profile, and we're going to end up leaching those salts below the root zone. Hari.
So we don't have to worry about them coming back up once the ground dries out?
Question is, do we have to worry about them coming back up when it starts to dry out? You bet they come right back with that wetted front. So we just have to keep the soil then at field capacity through the growing season to keep them driven down out of the root zone. Okay? Carl.
What about legumes and rotation of that? Get the nitrogen in there.
Well, there is a problem. The question is, what about legumes or nitrogen fixing and also the nitrogen that would be in the soil that is a residual, well, you're going to leach that nitrogen out of the root zone, and that is a detrimental effect. So leaching always isn't the greatest thing in the world, because not only does it leach out the bad guys, it leaches out the good guys too.
That's a crop rotation, right?
Well, a crop rotation might help resolve some of that problem, yeah.
But you're going to put the fertilizer in there, so you don't need that.
Well, you know, some of that fertilizer, if it's in the organic mix and it hasn't deteriorated all the way yet, maybe it's not going to leach, because we're still using that bacterial breakdown to release that nitrogen over a period of time. It's just the leachables, so it'd be the inorganic fertilizers we might have in the ground are going to dissolve. They're going to move with the wetted front, along with the salts. As soon as we start drying that ground out, using water by the crop and not applying enough water back, it'll start moving back up in the profile. And it can move right back up into the root zone, and then we're in trouble again, because now we've got salt penetration back into our root zone. So we have to make sure we keep enough water in the profile not to allow the leached material to come back up into the root zone. It's a real delicate balance. And ideally what you'd like to do is leach it enough so that you literally move it clear out of the field. Leach it down into the underground aquifer and let it drain clear out. Put it into drains. In some areas they will go in and put drain fields in even, and they'll drain it right out of the field. Well, there you've got rid of it. So you've eliminated the problem. You've eliminated the salts. Very expensive, but it can be done. And in some areas they have a little problem with where do you get rid of the salts that you drain out of there.